formula for making a breakthrough in any area of your life? This is a question that many of us ask and reflect on, and I want to share with you a 4-part process, a 4-part formula on how this is achieved. So I like to call this the 4-pillar cycle of breakthrough. So a breakthrough consists of 4 things essentially. Firstly, inner alignment. This is the connection with the self and feeling at your best in a clear and happy state in order to act and move accordingly. That leads to the second pillar, and that is having intuition, so having clarity in your life. Clarity comes from having time to reflect, a bit of quiet time, going for walks, spending time in nature, giving the mind a chance to wander and solve problems away from constantly being in the prefrontal cortex and doing everything with thinking. So that's the second thing. The third pillar is being in an environment that is nurturing, one that allows you to share your passion and your inner driving force and spark with others, whilst it in turn is enhanced by others because they're then able to share with you their passion and their enthusiasm. So this starts creating momentum and starts getting you inspired to move forward. And then finally, simply showing up and allowing the process to pan out, staying the course, showing up, being faithful and just trusting, and then bringing it back to the second point whenever you need to. So my friends, the reason I talk about this is because it's a really important question. A lot of us ask this question, or we find that this is a really key factor to our life success, this breakthrough. Well, first let's start by defining the term breakthrough. So a breakthrough is essentially when you create a change, you create a positive shift in your life to achieve a desired result. So this could be in the world of careers and jobs, this could be a promotion, this could be some kind of advancing in your career, some kind of accomplishment. Or maybe it's a change in your personal life. This could be being able to finally make that shift, move to a different location, start a new project, start a new business, just anything that you're looking to change. So that could be the breakthrough. Or it could be a breakthrough in a relationship. It could be a breakthrough where you're once and for all able to really understand somebody and meet in the middle and really connect. So let's start by talking about that first pillar. Let's start by talking about the first pillar of making a breakthrough. The first pillar is about self-care. So in order to make any kind of success in your life, first of all, you've got to be in inner alignment. So you've got to be in a place where you yourself are feeling happy and healthy. So that is a question that only an individual can answer themselves. What makes them happy? What is healthy that makes them happy? So when they discover that, they can build their own practice. Self-care comes from having a healthy practice, so it's a healthy routine. So having a relaxed routine, but one that is disciplined. So it's not too strenuous, but it is the sweet spot of productivity. So in philosophy, there is a formula to reaching optimal progress and an optimal performance in life. They call it the flow state. Now, when you're in the flow state, as the philosopher Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi describes, you are essentially immersed in what you're doing. You're in your element, right? So how do you get in that state? It's the place between something that's a bit too easy, maybe even boring, and then something that's a bit too difficult, so almost stressful, that it creates people to fail and give up and to clock out, essentially. So once we get in that sweet spot, we can really enjoy the process. Now the sweet spot, the flow state, comes about when a musician is performing. They're just enjoying themselves. They're playing music and they're just completely in the zone and they lose track of time. They don't even have any awareness of what's around them because they're just playing music. They are tuned in. They have a tunnel vision for what they're doing in the most impressive and spectacular way. They are just performing. So getting into a flow state, allowing moments in the day to get into that flow state. But also, on the topic of self-care, the most important thing is that people allow themselves to have a routine and a habit that works for them. Because what this allows people to do is just to show up, and they can essentially just do whatever is required without any complication. You see, when we put something in the diary and we have it scheduled in, all we have to do is show up. You know, it makes life a lot easier. We don't have to waste precious headspace and mental power trying to make this thing happen. Rather, it's already booked in. We just have to show up and just be attentive. My uncle said to me a brilliant quote once. He said, "Hugh, if you ever do anything in your life when you have children, make sure that you have a meal time. Make sure that you just have a time in the week where you all meet for dinner, and it's a catch-up. It's a time to check in and spend quality time with the family. So no matter what everyone does throughout the day, you meet up at that time in the evening. It doesn't have to be too fixed, you know. There's no regimented time slot, but around about that time, you know, you meet for dinner and yeah, have 30 minutes or more just spending time with the family. And those things act as stability and structure in our life, and it ties in with self-care, because self-care is about caring for yourself. So it's not just about, and although this is just as important, nutrition and exercise and looking after yourself, but it's also about caring about how you manage your day. So journaling is self-care, putting something in the diary is self-care, and also being organised is self-care. So that's a really important thing. The second point, the second pillar of breakthrough is about intuition. So how do we get into that state of intuition? Similar to the flow state, intuition is where we allow our mind a chance to wander. So we're not thinking in the usual linear way that we often are when we're solving a task, aka doing something mathematically, or doing something with our prefrontal cortex, or doing something with our problem-solving mindset. But rather, we are absorbing different stimuli. We're coming up with new ideas, and what this is doing is allowing the mind a chance to wander. When I studied architecture, I worked in different groups, and I would find that when we worked in a group, we would bounce ideas off each other. So you would find that you wouldn't always be coming up with the same ideas, the same types of designs. You know, you would research different precedents. You would research Spanish architects and see what their line of thought was. How did they, you know, use structural supports? You would use a whole range of different precedents, and then you would form a kind of evaluation of what functioned, what worked. You know, you'd look at different ideas, you would hear different points of view, you would explore, you know, thesis and antithesis, and then you would essentially meet in the middle and find this synthesis. You would find a way of taking on board both ways of thinking and amalgamating and galvanizing them. But that galvanizing, that breakthrough in thinking comes about when you have a moment to let the mind wander. Because the mind is very much like a muscle. You know, you could be working out in the gym all the time, but that's not when, you know, the muscle is just built. You can't just work out. It's also the resting time. It's also the protein. It's also what we eat. It's also about having that in-between space where the muscles get a chance to build. It's the same with our minds. We have to have that in-between space where we have a chance to get new ideas and a chance for the mind to then work things out. So that's how we get intuition. Relaxing the mind. Another really useful principle to adopt is, as many people speak about, Jay Shetty spoke about this a long time ago, was to not look at your phone the minute you wake up. Because what that's doing is it's essentially sending out a message that whatever's on that phone is more important than the immediate primary environment. So what that does is it creates a change in our focus, and we become distracted, and then that can, at worst, it can completely derail our day if we see something not so pleasant on the news, or it can just distract us and send us into a different line of thought. And that takes us away from our individual goals. So if there's anything you could take from this video on how to be productive and get clarity in your life to where you want to be and take action and make that breakthrough, I would simply say, you know, try to avoid looking at your phone for, you know, a few minutes at the start of the day, and rather get straight to, you know, building your morning routine, because that's how the day happens, and that's how breakthroughs happen, because you're able to plan your day and create intention on where you want to go. But if we pick up Instagram, we just watch another funny video of a cat doing a backflip or some funny meme, then that's gonna take away our attention, and we're gonna be using our intention to look at that, which is not going to lead to anything. So intuition comes from the quiet space, the silent moments. That's what's really important. Good quality sleep, all of that. It ties in with self-care. It's all very much of the same theme. The third pillar of breakthrough is about being in the right environment. Now, this is a tricky one, because being in the kind of habit of someone that always went to school, and there's almost this ingrained kind of way of operating where we're constantly having to do, you know, thank Henry Ford for that, you know, shout out to Henry Ford with the, you know, the 5-day 9-to-5 working week. But the truth is, unless you're designing an automobile, unless you're doing something in a factory, you know, it's not about doing all the time. You know, things don't change through doing, but things change through being and feeling. So sometimes you have to take a step back. So the key thing is to get in different environments, find different inspiration, you know, do something different every week that will create a change. Now, sometimes we don't know the how. We can't possibly always know the how of how these things will come about. You know, you could be someone that works in the medical sector and maybe had some free time in the week, and maybe you decide to go to acting classes, or maybe you decide to do a pottery class, you know, or maybe you decide to do a sewing workshop. You know, it sounds like it's completely irrelevant to what you're doing. However, you might just find you meet somebody there that sparks a conversation and shares something with you that you didn't know. You might find somebody there that, you know, is running a business or has done some research that's really intriguing. You see, this is how the universe works. And when we're doing something so often in a linear way, we're going to miss out on those little quirks and those little intricate moments in life where you can have that inspiration and have that conversation. So do something different. Be spontaneous, you know, show up to a different event. And also show up in rooms where you are safe and supported to share your passions, because what that does, my friends, is that creates a double combo. Have you ever been in a room where you're talking to somebody and they're talking about something they're inspired about, and you just see their eyes light up? I mean, what a wonderful feeling. You know, you just see that, you know, they are so enthusiastic about what they're talking about. You know, they're actually embodying it. You know, you can see the joy in their face when they talk about it. You see, that's what happens when you're in a room and you're in an environment where you're sharing with like-minded people that are also interested in these similar questions, who are also asking similar questions. What happens is that you're creating a double combo. First of all, you're being able to express yourself and share your spark and enhance your passion, but also you're meeting other people that are also inspired and intrigued by the same subject, so they're going to share what they're interested in. They're going to share their insight to it, and that's going to help you, and you're going to create this brilliant synergy, because that's going to allow the momentum and the motivation to happen. So then you're able to move forward. So when you've got that, just stay the course, keep moving forward. You know, you're motivated now, you've found what you want to do, you've got the insight, you've got the intuition, and you know how to act. Now it's just a case of showing up. Keep doing it. It might take time, it might come through in a different way that you didn't expect, but the key thing at this point is just to continue to show up, and then there's no chance but the breakthrough to show up. And this can be in any industry. It's really that simple. I would go as far to say that this would work in everything except for something in the medical world or to do with flying a jumbo jet. But almost everything else, I think this could apply. So you can make that breakthrough and just stay the course. And if need be, if it's going on for too long and you feel like you're waiting for a long time, then bring it back to self-care again. Bring it back to the joy. Bring it back to the things you enjoy. So my friends, that's what I want to share with you. You know, there's so many videos and tutorials and and consultants sharing these kind of topics on YouTube, and there's many different speakers and ways of describing this, all very much within the same theme. And this is just my take on it. This is my way of amalgamating all that knowledge and essentially compartmentalizing it to an easy, understandable way so that it can transcend all different schools of thought, so it can transcend the business mindset, so that it can transcend the spiritual world and the world of mindfulness, and so that it can transcend the creative world and everything else. So that's just something to think on. That's a bit of food for thought. The 4 pillars, the cycle of breakthrough. Because many things in life are a circle. You know, the truth is, if there's anything I've learned in my life, it's that it's an ongoing process when you're creating anything meaningful, and it requires reflection, it requires looking back, even being a teacher in my life and a tutor, self-reflection. So something to think about, guys. You know, I share this because it comes from the bottom of my heart. You know, I want people to reach their full potential. I really believe that, you know, I really believe it can happen. You know, these are things that are not really taught at school, and people can't really put their finger on it to really dissect and understand these things at school. But when you really break it down, it's so simple. You know, 4 pillars: the self-care, the healthy routine, you know, a balanced lifestyle, creating space. Number 2, creating space for clarity and intuition so that you can act on it. The third one, showing up in supportive and safe environments so that you can share that inspiration. And then the 4th one, when you have that motivation, when you have that shared momentum, just keep showing up. Just keep showing up, just keep doing it. And if need be, come back to 1 and 2. So there you go, my friends. I hope that's been helpful. In the meantime, I'm wishing you a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning in. You've been watching Hue and Colour. I'll catch you in the next episode.